All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, and welcome to another segment of Bama Bug Fest on the web, a virtual event dedicated to the fascinating world of insects. Bama Bug Fest on the web is a collaborative event brought to you by UA Museums, the Mildred Wester Warnevelt Transportation Museum, the Alabama Museum of Natural History, Department of Research and Collections, UA's Rogers Library, and the Tuscaloosa Public Library. We are offering 9 total days of bug-themed content starting today, July 7th, and ending on July 25th. For a full schedule of events, you can visit the event website at bamabugfest.org. Today, we're talking about what makes a bug, and are about to jump into what is a bug with Dr. John Friel, the director of the Alabama Museum of Natural History. How's it going, John?
It's going good, Allie. I'm excited to kind of educate the public about what we consider to be bugs. Hopefully they'll learn something today. There's a lot of technical terms. I try to keep it simple, but feel free. People can ask questions either at the end of my presentation or tonight at our question and answer wrap up at 7.
Oh, great. Sounds good. Well, are you ready to jump on in?
Yep. I'll go ahead and move over to my presentation.
Okay. Sounds good. Let me get you all set up.
Good to go, Allie? Oops. Jumped ahead a slide. How about that? Okay. So to my presentation today, if you caught my introduction, I talked a little bit about the Bug Fest in general. Didn't go a lot into what a bug was. So that's what I'm going to delve into in this particular presentation. And it may seem like a simple question. Well, everyone knows what a bug is, but as you'll see in a moment, it gets complicated. So the idea is I at least want to introduce you to what we consider bugs in the broad sense. So most people think, when they say bugs, they think insects, and insects are definitely bugs. But I think in a more inclusive sense, there's a much larger group of organisms that we also like to call colloquial bugs, and we will celebrate during Bug Fest. So without ado, I'm going to start my talk by equating the term bugs with arthropods, which is a more technical term that really captures the scope of the group of organisms that we're going to focus on through our event. And the word arthropod, if you look at how it's formed, it actually is a combination of 2 Greek words, one for foot or leg and another for joint, which together mean jointed leg. So arthropods are a group of animals that have jointed legs. But there's some other features as well that in combination really define them. Second, they're invertebrates. So unlike us, they don't have a backbone. They instead have segmented bodies, and depending on the group you look at, this may not be obvious when you see them because sometimes the segments get fused, but they at least have segmented bodies at some part of their development. And then the third kind of feature that all arthropods have is a distinctive exoskeleton. While you and I think of our skeleton as being internal, arthropods have their skeleton on the outside, and instead of being made of bone, it's primarily made of a substance called chitin, which is a polymer of glucosamine, and in some arthropods, mainly crustaceans, beetle mites, and some millipedes, is further mineralized with calcium carbonate, something that's kind of more similar to the mineralized bone that we have. So if you think about it, if you've ever shucked or eaten crabs, you know the carapace that's left over, all the stuff you throw away, that's the part of the exoskeleton. So that's the chitin, and in the case of crabs, the biomineralized parts of it. So those 2 things, having a segmented body, having jointed legs, and having an exoskeleton are 3 really distinctive features that all arthropods will have. So that's things they have in common, but arthropods, as you'll soon find out, are incredibly diverse, and they're everywhere. So here's just a kind of 2 graphics. I think, again, don't focus so much on the details. Look at the pretty colors. You might think they're so different than me or you, but I'm going to make some comparisons. If you think about your own body, you have a head, thorax, and abdomen. All arthropods or bugs have similar body parts, and they're colored similarly here. So to the right is another figure showing some diversity of arthropods. We have a lobster, a centipede, a scorpion, a beetle, an ant, a crab, a spider, and a fly. And what you see there is they all have these segmented bodies. The number of segments varies, the size of the segments and the body regions vary, but there's a general similar organization. And you can think about this, if any of you did the build a bug exercise, that was kind of a first step in understanding the kind of plug and play body form that arthropods have. So again, I'm not going to get into a lot of the details. It gets complicated, but you'll see there's a lot of variation. But in all those, you can compare, for example, the head of a lobster to the head of a spider, to the head of a fly. And like I said, they'll vary in number of legs, so that's something. And there are even arthropods which completely lose legs. So when you have a very large, diverse group of organisms, evolution does some crazy things, and we'll get some crazy body forms. But they all have those three features: being segmented, having jointed legs, and having an exoskeleton. And this is just a reminder that when I say arthropods are everywhere, 80% of all described animals species on Earth are arthropods, with well over 1 million described species. Some estimates I've seen over 5 million species of arthropods if we ever understand all the species that are out there. So they're incredibly diverse. The little pie chart on the screen here, we're vertebrates, which are a part of the chordata. So we're in that red slice there. But everything that says other arthropods going counterclockwise all the way over to Diptera, the purple on the left, are arthropods. So it's an enormous piece of the animal pie, so to speak, are these arthropod animals. So they're incredibly diverse. You certainly have encountered them. You probably encounter them on a daily basis. Some of us don't even recognize them because they're either minute, microscopic. There are some arthropods, believe it or not, that live on the human body, some as parasites, some as kind of just organisms that are going along for a free ride. So they are literally everywhere, and they're so interwoven into our lives. They've been on Earth for so long. Humans have evolved, and human ancestors and primates have evolved with arthropods through our entire history. So I just want to start off with some cool facts about arthropods. Again, only touching on some big ones here, but kind of things. I mentioned that arthropods are incredibly old. The earliest arthropods are known from the fossil record going back over 15 million years, that's pretty significant deep time, and have been with us since then. So there are fossils of arthropods all the way up to living arthropods we'll be talking about a lot at the Bugfest this year. They're also the first group of animals that moved on to land. So way before fishes transitioned into terrestrial animals that lived on land, arthropods beat them there. I think the earliest arthropod is a millipede-like animal. Fossils go back to almost 420 million years ago. So that's just incredibly. So they have been on Earth for a really long time. And through this time, they've been doing incredible things, had a lot of time to evolve, really interesting forms in biology. Some things they all have in common is that most arthropods lay eggs. One exception, though, are scorpions, which produce live young, but they don't do it outside the body. The live young are born inside the mother, or hatch inside the mother out of their eggs, and then exit the mother's body. So a little bit of an exception there, but by and large, most arthropods lay eggs. The other thing I mentioned is arthropods have this exoskeleton. So they have this external skeleton. So when you and I grow, we do slough off little bits of skin. We don't have to shed our skeleton as we grow. It grows with us because it's inside. But with arthropods, since they have this hard body armor on the outside, when it comes time to grow, that body armor doesn't stretch. It's really a rigid surface. So in order to grow, they have to periodically molt or shed that skeleton. And this is something you may have seen that. Probably the most common thing we'll see around here, you may see the molt of a cicada. This time of year when they're emerging, they live most of their lives underground, but when they come out as adults, they often climb up a tree and will molt out of their larval form into a winged adult. And you'll see the exoskeleton on the sides of trees. It's a really common thing to find here in Alabama this time of year. So those are just some cool facts. And then everyone always wants to know, well, what's the biggest? So there's two ways you can do that. We can look at the largest living arthropod, which is the Japanese spider crab. There's a picture of a normal-sized human being holding one of these animals, and these are known to have a leg or claw span up to 13 feet. So the claws there at the very tips of the front pair of appendages that you see, and they can be tip to tip if they stretch them out 13 feet across. So that's a pretty big arthropod. On the other end of the spectrum, there are incredibly tiny arthropods. Some of them are practically microscopic. There are tiny mites that live in our eyelashes of many adults. There are also very microscopic wasps and flies. If you think about weight, because sometimes the biggest isn't always the heaviest, but the biggest living arthropod is something a lot of us would know. It's the typical American lobster. If you've ever eaten a lobster in a restaurant or at home, that's the American lobster, or typically the American lobster, I should say. There are some other lobsters that are consumed. And the record for those is about 44 pounds. So while they might not be the biggest arthropods, they're by weight the heaviest. So those are some cool facts. And then I always like to put in some kind of bugs theme meme, excuse me. So in the bottom there, I like to point out that a bug theme in Alabama, we're one of the few states that actually has a monument that features an arthropod. There is a cotton boll weevil monument in Enterprise, Alabama. And that was actually a fact that came up in a trivia night we had a few weeks ago for UA museums. So that's a cool Bama-specific bug fact you can share with your family and friends. So now I'm going to go through the main groups of arthropods. I can't go through all of them. I kind of want to keep it simple because you can easily get overwhelmed with names and details. But one really interesting group we have are trilobites. And most people have probably seen a trilobite, at least in a museum. They're really common fossils. Trilobites are an exclusively marine group of arthropods that are all extinct. They were basically wiped out in the Permian Triassic extinction event about 250 million years ago, and thus are only known from fossils. And they are all over the world. We actually have trilobite fossils here in Alabama. In the northern part of the state, they are not uncommon. And you can go through our collections here, and we have examples here in our UA museum collections. So really cool animal, but just look at the general body form. They do vary a bit in the spine shape, but you'll see this body form is kind of repeated in some of the more unrelated arthropod groups I'll show you next. Next up, a really big group of arthropods are what we call Chalisarates. And these include things like I've got on the squares there, sea spiders. These are marine groups of organisms that are not familiar to a lot of people. Another extinct group, sea scorpions, shown to the side of that. Things like horseshoe crabs, shown at the bottom there. And then finally, more common representatives that you're probably familiar with are things like typical spiders, mites, ticks, scorpions, and several other related arthropods. And these are all characterized, as their name implies, by a special pair of appendages called chelicerae, which are just above in front of the mouth. And depending on the group, sometimes these are claw-like appendages, such as in scorpions, or in the case of spiders, they actually become the fang apparatus in spiders. So really cool group of arthropods that will definitely feature in our Bugfest activities this year. And in the little bug meme there, I kind of posit this question is, are lobsters the mermaids the scorpions, which I think is kind of an interesting thing to ponder. The next group within the Chalisarates, or kind of the main group, I should say, are the arachnids. And arachnids include things like I mentioned, scorpions, ticks, mites, harvestmen, or daddy longlegs, as some people may know them, and solifuges. This is a group sometimes called camel spiders. We don't have any representatives in Alabama, but they do occur in Florida, in the southwestern U.S. and other parts of the world. And more recently, studies have shown that actually horseshoe crabs belong to this group we know as arachnids. And to the right are pictures of kind of representatives that give you kind of an idea about some of the variations. So I've got things represented there. Scorpions at the top. Next to them, the opalons are the harvestmen. We've also got things like pseudoscorpions, which are really tiny scorpion-looking like arachnids. Acariformes are mites. Parasitiformes are ticks, which you certainly should be aware of here in Alabama because we're in prime tick season. The horseshoe crab, and then all the way to the right there are spiders. So that's probably the most common group of arachnids most people are going to be familiar with. And then at the bottom there, we've got amblypygids, and then another group are the vinegaroons. So, but they all kind of have very similar shape. Most of them have 8 pairs of legs, although the front pair of legs is sometimes involved in a sensory function. And that's particularly true for the amblypygids, the whip scorpions. They have these incredibly slender legs, the front pair, that they actually use as feelers, as sensory objects. And again, we don't have, unfortunately, any species here in Alabama, but if you go to southern Florida or you ever travel to a tropical region in the world, you may encounter these bizarre creatures. And again, a little meme there is reiterating the fact that these horseshoe crabs, things that kind of look like trilobites. I think a lot of people, if you ask them, they might say, "Oh, that must be and sometimes they're called living fossils." You might think our horseshoe crabs, which you can find along the coast of Alabama, are trilobites, but in fact, they are arachnids, chelicerates, and are more closely related to spiders than they are to trilobites. Another group which is really common here in Alabama, most of you have probably encountered, are myriapods. Now, these include millipedes and centipedes, the two largest groups, and some little other groups that are less common. In general, most of these, depending on what group they are, will have 1 or 2 pairs of legs per body segment. The general rule is millipedes will have 2 pairs, and they tend to have, depending on the species, may have up to more than 100 legs. Centipedes, on the other hand, typically only have 1 pair of legs. So in the top image, one of those is the centipede, the other one is the millipede, and then the 2 lower images are related myriapod groups that we won't focus too much on today. Good way to tell millipedes from centipedes is millipedes are herbivores. They eat plant matter. They're not carnivorous. They're generally harmless. So some of them have chemical defenses. Some of them, if you've ever picked them up, you may notice they smell like almonds. They have like a cyanide-like chemical that they exude for defense. Others emit different chemicals that will kind of temporarily stain your hands. Those are millipedes. They tend to be kind of slow-moving. Centipedes, on the other hand, are quite fast-moving. They're on the other end of the spectrum. They are the big predators. They have specialized appendages they use to grasp, and some of them also have venom. So they're really fast-moving. So if you see something moving, if it's moving really fast, it's almost certainly a centipede. If it's moving slow, it's a millipede. So those are just some general rules in which you can easily tell. Another cool thing about millipedes, if you ever go out at night with a black light, they're one of the groups of organisms that biofluoresce. Another one that I forgot to mention earlier were scorpions, and they fluoresce different colors. Most millipedes around here that I've seen, they're typically a bluish cast if you have a UV light. Another group are crustaceans. This is another group of arthropods that many of you are familiar with or should be. These ones are primarily aquatic, so typically freshwater or marine, but there are exceptions, most notably roly-polies or woodlice, which are in fact terrestrial isopods. They are basically crustaceans that live out of the water, and they're something that I guarantee almost everyone has them in their yards. They're everywhere I've been in Alabama. These are characterized, if you look at the details of the legs, they have legs that have 2 branches. We're not going to focus on the details of those, but that's a distinguishing feature. And this group includes lobsters, crabs, barnacles. Most people don't realize that barnacles are, in fact, really highly modified crustaceans. If you looked at the picture of the barnacle all the way on the right, you might not recognize that as being a crustacean, but in fact it is. Crayfishes, these are lobster-like, shrimp-like organisms. One thing fascinating here is we have the highest diversity of freshwater crayfishes in the world right here in Alabama. So it's something that is uniquely something we like to promote during the Bug Fest. Shrimp, most people have eaten shrimp or crayfish or lobster. If you have, you've eaten bugs. I like to remind people because one of the other things we talk about here is eating insects, entomophagy, and people get grossed out by eating insects. But when you think about them in the big picture, if you've eaten crustaceans, you've in fact eaten what we would term bugs. Other things I'll point out here in the slide, 2 things at the bottom you might not recognize. One of those is a copepod. The triops, the thing that looks like, again, a trilobite is actually a fairy shrimp. So again, there's kind of been convergent morphology. So it looks similar, but in fact is a crustacean, not a trilobite. So again, little meme there. I like to point those out because I love finding them. So these are both arthropods and crustaceans if you're a crab. And then kind of the last major group we're going to focus on are the hexapods. And hexapods are by far, we already mentioned arthropods are such a large proportion of animals. The biggest proportion of arthropods are hexapods. And these contain primarily insects, which most of us are familiar with, along with some smaller orders of insect-like animals. All of these typically have 6 thoracic legs, so 6 legs that attach to the thoracic part of the body. And they're also the only arthropod group that's ever evolved wing flight. So many insects have wings. Some have secondarily lost them, but in general, if you find a bug with wings, you know it's a hexapod insect. And again, the major groups here, looking at right, don't worry about the scientific names, but on the right there, beetles, Coleoptera are beetles, and there are more beetle species than any other insects. Other really diverse groups are wasps and ants, Hymenoptera. This also includes bees, Diptera, the flies, including midges and mosquitoes, and the other big group are Lepidoptera, butterflies and moths. So those make up the big chunk of the hexapods, but there are many other smaller groups, things like dragonflies, arthropods, which are grasshoppers and katydids. So it's an incredibly diverse group, and we have both locally an amazing diversity here that hopefully you'll get to see through our programming and in future Bama bug events. One thing I want to point out, because some people are sticklers for rules, technically, if you want to be a scientist, true bugs are actually only one order of insects, the Hemiptera. So if you want to be Dwight Schrute, this is for you. They are an order that encompasses more than 50,000 species, and things you might be familiar with are cicadas, aphids, plant hoppers, leaf hoppers, shield bugs, stink bugs, assassin bugs. Those are all Hemiptera. And kind of, a lot of them, they kind of look like beetles, but they're distinguished from beetles by having a very particular sucking mouth part, either to feed on plants, or in some cases there are carnivorous forms, like assassin bugs, which use it to harpoon and kill their prey. So those are what, so in a case, sometimes you'll see people, depending who you're talking to, when they say bugs, if you're talking to an entomologist, he typically thinks of hemipterans. We're more lackadaisical, or kind of, I guess, more inclusive with our definition. So at the Bug Fest, we include all arthropods among bugs. And so we're not going to be sticklers for the rules. We're going to basically have a big bug family at the Bama Bug Fest. So again, just reminding people that bugs are incredibly diverse. These arthropods, in the picture here, going all the way from Diptera clockwise to Lepidoptera, Coleoptera, Hymenoptera, all the other insect orders, and then all the other arthropod orders, the spiders, the scorpions, the crustaceans. So they're a big part of animal life. And not only is this on a global scale, so this is globally, this data, I like to remind people there have been studies of your homes. So a good thing to remind people of is that you don't have to go outside to encounter this diversity of arthropods. This was a study done a couple of years ago at North Carolina State University, where they surveyed homes in North Carolina to see how diverse the arthropods were using various traps. And you'll see here a kind of a similar pattern. A big diversity of groups: flies, spiders, beetles, wasps, true bugs, cockroaches, springtails, moths and butterflies, isopods, silverfish, millipedes, crickets, mites. So, and the idea is that it probably wouldn't be different for most of our homes here. A lot of people don't think I don't have any bugs. Well, I guarantee you there are at least some arthropods living in your home. And I mentioned we even have species which have co-evolved with us. I mentioned there are much of the population have species of mites that live harmlessly in our eyelashes, just living off kind of the oil and waxy secretions we produce from our eyelashes. So bugs are everywhere, including on us. So in wrapping up, I just want to thank everybody and encourage you to come out and participate virtually through our Bottom Bug Fest presentations. I mentioned this earlier, and I want to mention again because I really want, this is a way in which we're sending content out to you. We'd love to get your ideas and see your creativity coming back at us. So I'm running a sticker giveaway for some Bama Bug Fest stickers. So we have two designs, one with the Bama Bug Fest logo with our giant staghorn beetle, as well as Black Lives Matter jumping spider sticker that were produced for us by Dr. Sebastian Echeverry, who's going to be involved in some of our live stream programming. If you create some bug-themed artwork, some memes, some jokes, or photos, share them on your social media with the hashtag Bama Bug Fest, excuse me. Now between now and July 25th, and then weekly, I'm going to go through our social media, and I'm going to pick out my favorites and reward my favorites with one of these stickers. And we have limited supplies. We don't have a lot of the jumping spider. I do have a fair number of the Bama Bug Fest, but this is a way in which you can share your content with us. And just to give you some inspiration, I went online and found some posts that I think would be typical of the kind of things we'd love to see. Here's one that I actually saw today. This is someone I follow on social media who studies sharks, but she has a theme where she posts how it pants. So she draws pants on different types of animals. And I didn't contact her, but by chance, she drew pants on an isopod and asked the question, how would isopods wear pants? So this is a really great example of the kind of creativity I would love to see from our viewers that learn something about bugs and then bring their passion to it and draw some bug-themed art or make up a bug-themed joke. So this is a great example, and I'd be curious to know what people think. How should isopods? How should the roly-polies you find in your backyard? How, if they did wear pants, would it be one set of pants, or would it be a bunch of separate pants, and they have a bunch of suspenders holding them on their bodies? These are the kind of questions I like to think about. Another platform which I think is amazing, and I pulled out some great examples, is TikTok. I think this is something that I know is really popular with young people and want to encourage their creativity. Someone I follow is Jada Elcock. Again, she's someone who studies fishes. I'm a fish biologist, and that's why I follow a lot of these people. And she has an animal facts series, and I just pulled out a few examples that I'm going to go with that I think are educational and entertaining, and is the kind of content I love when young people share. So I'll play a couple of her TikTok videos that feature arthropods that we've talked about. Here's the first one on giant isopods.
Oh, John, I think we're having trouble hearing it. John, can you hear me? Hey, John, can you hear me?
So that was a great example of Jada's creativity. You might have noticed there, she actually used bugs in the more restrictive sense, saying that these giant isopods weren't bugs, but in the broad sense, I'd consider them to be bugs. And again, this is something, if we were originally planning, we actually have a specimen here in the UA Museum collections that we would have on display of one of these giant isopods. So hopefully at a future public event, you can see one of these giant isopods in person. Here's another one of our video. I think this one's on another arthropod,
John,
this time a crustacean.
John, can you hear me?
Once again, Jada does a great job communicating some facts about these crustaceans. We do have spiny lobsters in the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Alabama. Some of these are actually commercially important. You can sometimes buy, I'm seeing them in Publix locally, spiny lobsters for sale as food items. And then the final example I'm going to do is an insect that Jada did a TikTok video on.
John, can you hear me? John? Hey, John. Sorry, everyone. I know the sound isn't quite working on the TikTok video. So what we'll do is we'll post the video links in the comments. So please go ahead and visit them later on so we can see the TikTok videos that he's talking about. The visuals look great, but the sound is not working quite well right now. So be on a lookout in the comments for the TikTok videos.
Animal facts about an insect. I will add, we actually do have relatives of these glowworms right here in Alabama. If you've ever been up to Dismal Canyon National Park, we have a similar type of gnat where the larvae are bioluminescent. So you don't even have to go to New Zealand. You can actually travel to a place right here in Alabama where we have these bioluminescent fly larvae that produce these blue light. So again, a great example. So again, hope that inspired a lot of people. With that, I'm going to take any questions people have. So I'll move back to Allie, and she can tell me whether any questions have come in through the comments.
Hey, John, can you hear me okay?
Allie, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me? Oh, I think we're having trouble with the microphones. Hang on. John, can you hear me
Allie.
at all?
Are you there?
Hang on 1 second. Sorry, everyone. Let me go ahead and see if we can fix all this weird sound issue that's happening. Let's see. John, can you hear me okay?
Not sure if we're having technical difficulties.
John. Oh.
Aha.
Can
Okay,
you hear
Allie.
me okay?
No, I'm sorry about the tech. I'm sorry you couldn't hear those TikToks. That is disappointing.
That's okay.
I thought the audio was going to come through, but
hang on.
Are you still there,
1
Allie?
second, everyone.
I can't tell if you are still. Yep.
1 second, guys.
Right.
Okay, 1 second. John's we're gonna try to resolve some of these issues. Sorry, this is live, everyone. It's exciting and live, and things happen all the time. But because the TikTok videos didn't work in sharing the video in that presentation, we'll go ahead and link to all 3 of them so you get a chance to see them. Hey, John, how's it going?
Got that, Allie. I didn't realize the audio wasn't coming through.
That's okay. I think what we'll do, if it's okay with you, is add links to each of those TikTok videos that you had to the comments so people can watch them later.
Yeah,
okay,
definitely.
Wonderful.
Yeah, definitely follow Jada. Like I said, they were all kind of things that she does a lot besides arthropods, but those are just 3 arthropod examples she had. And like I said, some of them are tie into the groups we talked about. Some of them have a connection. I love the glowworm one because we have the dismalites right here in Alabama that a lot of people don't know about. Really special arthropod feature you can see right here in Alabama. You don't have to go all the way to New Zealand.
Yes.
Are there any questions, Allie, that have come in?
Yeah, so we've had lots of comments, which I'll show you in a little bit, but I do want to show you this one. Someone saw a caterpillar today that had a line pulsating in the middle. Do you have any idea what that might have been?
Depends. It could have been the gut of these. Some caterpillars are kind of translucent. So caterpillars are just feeding machines. They eat a tremendous amount of vegetation. They have to grow quickly. So the idea is you probably, maybe if you've read the children's book, The Hungry Caterpillar, which is quite appropriate, but most caterpillars just eat, and pass a lot of plant material. And some of them have relatively translucent skin. And sometimes you can actually observe the plant material that's moving through them. So without seeing a picture of it, I suspect that's what it might have been. It could have also been part of the circulatory system. The other thing you sometimes see in caterpillars is they sometimes get parasitized by wasps. And I've also seen cases where sometimes it sounds creepy, but you can see the parasitic wasp larvae inside the caterpillar. So yeah, it is. There's some really interesting relationships, but that's the other possibility. So it's hard to say exactly what it was. Those are probably my top 2 most likely explanations for what you saw.
Great. So somebody said this too, which I love. Gotta love those live streams. They're always exciting. Something always happens.
It does.
One of my favorite ones said that they just loved all that knowledge that they got from this one. So thank you, John.
That's good. Again, there's so much information. I think, part of, I think both you understand that, Allie, but I always feel, it's really important for us to discuss these things. I mean, some people are kind of, when you start discussing things they're not familiar with, particularly if you use a lot of terms they're not familiar with, it's kind of off-putting. But to engage people, these things, you don't have to know what the scientific names are, and they shouldn't be a barrier. The idea is they're just cool. When you learn about these things and just weird things, and as you'll see through our live streams, how these things get incorporated into comic books and movies. And I recognize all the time, like, oh, I know where they got that idea from. It's from some arthropod, something weird about their biology. So that's the kind of thing I love as a scientist, and hopefully other people. So it's kind of the interface between the science and the art that is throughout our culture.
Hey, John, it looks like we had another question. You ready
Sure.
for another one?
Yeah. Hit me up.
How can you tell the poisonous caterpillars from the safe ones without knowing
Okay.
much about them?
Great question. Again, this is the kind of thing we love to have. We're going to have actually, I'm doing a live stream. I think next week about bites and stings, and this would be something I would talk about. But you should be aware there are several species of caterpillar, some which we have here right in Alabama that have hairs on them, which they're called urticating hairs, and they have venom associated with them. So my general rule, if it's fuzzy looking, don't touch it. Not all fuzzy looking caterpillars are venomous, but all the ones that are fuzzy like that. And what it is their hairs break off and often are barbed and will stick into you. So they're sometimes called pus caterpillars because they will actually produce little welts that'll become pus-filled things on your skin. And they're painful. There are actually some species which are just incredibly painful. And so, yeah, definitely be to look at. And some of them aren't even very big. So in general, also some of them are brightly colored. So if it's fuzzy looking and brightly colored, my advice would be look but don't touch.
And you called that, did you say urticating?
Urticating, it just means irritating. Again,
I was going to say, because it just sounds like irritating, which is exactly what they are.
that's probably, they're also urticating and irritating.
Irritating, right. And we've had issues with them out at expedition before where we've had fuzzy caterpillars that have accidentally found their way down a shirt or, in a sock or something like that. And they are irritating is a great word for that. Yep. It's painful.
And again, once they metamorphose, they're completely harmless. So we have things called flannel moths, which are beautiful fuzzy moths as adults. So in general, don't worry about fuzzy moths or butterflies. It's the caterpillars that you have to worry about. So while there are venomous caterpillars, there aren't any venomous butterflies or moths. So it's only that particular life stage. And again, it's a defense against predators. Caterpillars are preferred foods for lots of animals, particularly birds. So all these animals are doing is just trying to make it pupa so they can metamorphose into a beautiful butterfly or moth.
I mean, I guess if, my life was on the line, I wouldn't mind having some irritating spiky hairs on the outside of me either.
Yeah. I should say, one exception is there are some of these, when they molt to become a cocoon, some of the hairs get mixed in with the silk they make their cocoon with, and some of the cocoons can be a little bit irritating. So technical correction, it's not just a caterpillar, it's kind of the last molt of the caterpillar. Again, getting back to the theme that these animals, as they grow, have to shed this exoskeleton. So definitely something, but that's a great question. And it actually reminds me, I'm glad you did it, because I'm definitely going to put something about that. I'll include some photos when I do the live stream on that topic.
That would be great. So it looks like we don't have any more questions at the moment, but all of your TikTok videos have been posted in the comments. So please go back and video or watch those videos. And
I can tell you too, I actually messaged Jada, and she's going to hopefully be able to do a Bama bug theme TikTok on our logo, the giant stag beetle. So we'll see. She's actually at the moment taking a class out in Seattle off the coast of Seattle, actually, at Friday Harbor Marine Lab. She's a biologist. So she said she tried to fit it in. So I'm hoping she can, because as you'll see, she has such enthusiasm for the subject matter. I mean, even if you're not into bugs, she posts about all kinds of animals. Her favorite subject is sharks. So she's a great person to follow if you like sharks. But and she also takes suggestions. You can actually, if you have a favorite animal, you can pitch her idea. She's very active on Twitter, on TikTok. So either of those platforms, if you message her, she may respond. So
that's cool. Yep. I also wanted to make sure that I did this the last one, but I want to make sure that I shout out your meme ability. That one crustacean with the top hat that says you're an arthropod and a crustacean. Yeah. I laughed so hard back here behind the microphone. Thankfully, everything was muted. Yeah. But that was delightful. It was just delightful.
Some of them I create myself, some of the memes. Some of them are ones most of them are found memes. Most of them I just Google an animal with the meme and come up with those. So they're just, people, I just love, again, I love the connecting, because some people that aren't even into insects, but they get the humor of it. And I agree. Yeah. Anything in a top hat is fun.
Anything in it. And a cane. I mean, I think he even had a cane. It was ready.
It was a very sophisticated arthropod crustacean.
Well, that's great. So while you guys are watching this, and if you get a chance to watch it later, if you come up with other questions later, please feel free to add them into the comments. Wherever you're watching this video now, we'll be able to access the comments and those questions in. We have a couple of questions that were already posed to you guys. Is there anything that you found surprising here that Dr. Friel talked about? Was there anything that is familiar to you, that you have a story that you want to talk about? Please drop them all in the comments, and we'll visit them again at the daily wrap-up today at 7 o'clock, which you will see Dr. Friel and myself at, along with Sadie Zabawa from the Tuscaloosa Public Library. So please keep those questions and comments coming. We will be able to address them and talk about them later on tonight at 7 p.m.
Yep.
Is there any parting thoughts you want to leave everyone with?
Again, if you haven't done the bug, if you have kids, download the PDF of the Build-A-Bug and watch it. It doesn't take very long to watch Sadie read the book and then do the exercise of building your own bug. So you can make a bug with as many legs as you want, where you want the legs. You can go crazy. I mean, in most cases, there's probably a bug I can match it up to, but it would be great to see some, that's something you could post on social media. You could build your bug, come up with a cool name for it, and put the hashtag Bama Bug Fest on it, and have a chance to win one of our stickers. Or if you really want, you could submit it through the form we have for our official art contest. And if you win, we will feature you in the museum's print magazine in the future.
I was just about to say that if you found any inspiration with the Build-A-Bug workshop today, you can go on our website, bamabugfest.org, and you can find the art contest submission form and submit your piece of beautiful buggy art. So, all right, well, looks like we are about the end. Thank you again for joining us for Bama Bug Fest on the web today. Make sure to check us out this evening for the daily wrap-up at 7 p.m. Content will always appear at 10, 2, 4, and 7 on all the days that we are posting, and all these times are Central Standard Time. If you aren't able to join us in for the live presentations at the times that they happen, you can always go back and watch them later through archived videos on our social media sites, YouTube channels, and through our handy resource guide, which is available on the bamabugfest.org website. For a full schedule of events and a list of places to access Bama Bug content, please make sure to visit that website. And as always, we want to thank all of our collaborating partners for making this event happen. And we want to thank Dr. John Friel for being here today and teaching us what a bug is. We appreciate you spending a little bit of your time and sharing your expertise with us.
Yep, and thanks for being the host, Allie. Yeah,
thanks. So it looks like that'll do for this program. Looks like we will hopefully see you all next time on Bama Bug Fest on the web.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.